CVF Racing, we talked about it at the end of the episode last week. Now we're going to go in and start putting it in the car. And why are we doing this? So I'm going to show you real quickly what we've got going on here. This belt system on this car is an absolute hot mess. The alternator is trashed because the fan just rotates independently of the pulley. The AC compressor is offline with all of the other pulley grooves. The power steering pump is so offline with the rest of the grooves, I don't even find the place that I could move it to. The power steering, I could move to the second pulley set on here and it would line up a little bit better, but it's still not lining up with anything. But the biggest problem is the power steering, other than all the other problems with it. So we decided to go ahead and contact the guys at CVF Racing, and we got in a pulley kit from them. We're going to install that too for you today. Let's get on it. All right, so what I've got here on the table is something we showed you last week. I'm not going to break down every little piece here. Suffice it to say that the stuff from CVF Racing blew our minds when we first opened up the box. It is incredibly beautiful. It comes super complete from water pump to all the stuff you need to bolt on the front of the engine. It does not come with a harmonic balancer or any of that kind of stuff, but everything else is here. Complete instructions for all the parts you get. We did go with the optional oil reservoir for ours for the power steering pump. This will mount on the inner fender of the car. Really like the look of that. I think that's kind of neat. Cam and I have always been kind of a geek for that because he likes semis and I like 1964 Falcons, and they have that Eaton reservoir like our Galaxy outside has. Be that as it may. We're going to get started on this thing right now. We're going to pull the 347 small block from my build in here and put it on my engine, and then we're going to take it all off and put it on his engine, but we're doing that so you can see what we got going on.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start this install. If you're in vehicle, you want to go ahead and take all of your front accessories off down to bare timing cover. If you're reusing this timing cover, always tap all of these threads. You take a bore brush or a pistol cleaning brush, something like that, get all of the corrosion out of these through holes all throughout this block, and then absolutely stuff them full of anti-seize. That will save your behind later. So these are just some holding bolts that I'm going to use on this water pump. So I'm going to get this in place. Now you would RTV this gasket on both sides preferably, but we are not permanently installing this pump, so we're not going to put any gasket maker on these just to avoid the mess and having to clean it up later. All right, so you take your bracket and the side that has the countersinks in it goes towards you. You're going to want to take your 4 socket head bolts that are 6-inch long, and I'm just going to put these up here and put them in the holes just to hold this bracket up. Then, all right, that one's just started threading. That is one of the 1.9 spacers. I believe this is the 0.57. And when you have the one side threaded in, go ahead and push it flush and just look across the front, make sure that it's actually sitting level and it's not holding the bracket off center. Take your other 2 spacers. You have another 1.9 and then a 0.58 spacer. I'm going to thread these in gently. And doing them one at a time like this makes it to where you can do this by yourself. The directions do say that the recommended action is to put all of this on at one time, but there is a little section in there that says you can use holding bolts just like this. If you are going to leave this on, which we are not, you would want to use the original bolts that are the correct length for these and just go ahead and tighten them up. So I'm going to make sure all of this is seated. Now I'm going to take my 1/4-inch Allen and I'm going to snug these up, and I'm just picking this bracket up to make sure that it's not catching on the inside of this countersink. Right. And you do not want to tighten this all down on one side. torque specs are included in the directions. Always follow torque specs. We are not going to be torquing this because, again, this is not staying on this. So no point in doing the click when it's going to be. All right, next up is the alternator here. You've got a 3/8 by 2.7 bolt and a M8 by 25 millimeter bolt. All right, I'm going to put the bottom one in first because that is a through hole. I'm going to roll it up to the top mount. I'm going to thread the socket head screw in. Right. And then I've got a lock nut and a washer that go on the back side of the bottom bolt. And any of these socket head screws that go into a recess in this, always make sure just to move it a little bit so you're not binding on the sidewall. And you are going against aluminum, so you don't want to monkey down on these because the aluminum will gall very easily. All right, so that is just snugged up. So that should be good for the alternator. Now this is a V-belt pulley. We have a serpentine kit, so we will be removing this shortly. But for now, the alternator is installed. If your lug is not where you want it, so some people don't want it being straight up here because it's just harder to hide the cable, you can take these cap screws loose and rotate the back of the housing. Do not separate the housing. If you separate it, it will cause the brushes inside to extend, and then you have a fun time of reassembling your alternator, and it's just not a good time. But you can just rotate it. But I think we're fine. All right, so next up in line is the AC compressor, or as they call it, the peanut compressor.
They actually call it a peanut compressor?
Yes, that is what it is in the instructions. I have never heard of one of these called a peanut compressor before.
I wonder if somebody like had an audio autocorrect on and it just autocorrected it to peanut.
Maybe, but I don't know what they were calling it to call that. So just thread these in. These are M8 by 25 millimeters. And the only other point of note on this step is that the fittings need to go up. They need to go up because they have this really nice billet piece that will go there and shoot your AC hoses over to the side. All right, next up is our tensioner. So basic tensioner off something current. Use a 3/8 button head screw that is included in the kit. Thread this all the way down, and then on the back side of this, we will be putting a lock nut as well. And this threads into the bracket, so you tighten the bolt up first, then use a washer and a lock nut on the back side just for a little bit of added security. All right, next up is installing the crank pulley. To do that, we need our harmonic balancer, dampener, crank dampener, whatever your terminology is, it's got to go on there. So there is a keyway, just line it up. All right, it should slide all the way. One thing I like to do, probably not recommended, but take a mallet, tap the inside of the harmonic balancer. Do not hit the outside. That is not attached. Just give it a light tap to make sure that the lower timing gear is all the way seated against the back of the crank, and then thread in our bolt and washer. I believe these torque are somewhere in the 250 foot-pound range. I'm going to do 3 Douglas. 3. All right, that is snug. All right, up next is the crank pulley and the hub adapter. The hub adapter goes onto your harmonic balancer like so, and then the pulley faces outwards with these recesses facing out. So the easiest way that I'm going to be to do this is just to put it on your leg, not try to stack everything on the engine. And rotate it, you'll feel it seat. Start your other bolts. Make sure that the hub adapter is completely flush all the way around on your harmonic dampener. And then just go through, snug these down Just keep checking that to make sure everything is still seated. Big. This is a 5/16 Allen wrench. All right, that is snug. I believe next is the water pump or the power steering pump. All right, up next is the power steering pump with two M80 by 40 millimeter bolts. They slide in just like so. Next up is the water pump pulley and its beauty cap. So I'm going to go ahead and put one bolt in just so everything stays lined up. This is a 7/30 seconds out. I'm going to get this one to just snug, and I'm going to look at all the holes, make sure that the beauty cap is centered up.
You know, I've got a socket set that you could actually use to do this.
I just actually remembered a minute ago, I've got a 120 something piece Matco set in the back of my truck that I used to change my oil the other day.
But you're doing such a nice job.
Yeah,
I'm just going to leave you where you are because you're doing a nice job.
It's going great. Going great. All right, next up is the idler pulleys. One goes right here, one goes right here, and one goes on this side as well. They all have the same installation procedure. Thread your bolt in. Make sure that the little offset is in the relief cut here. And you're going to want to thread these down and then put a lock nut on the back side. Snug the pulley bolt up. This doesn't need to be German tight. All right, so I'm going to remove the V-belt pulley from the alternator. It's 15/16 nut. I like to do this with an impact. Just bump it, bump it, bump it. And eventually that nut will come right off. You don't want to sit there and keep impacting and spinning the alternator up. You're just wasting your time. So pull that off, pull the fan off as well. All right, so now the V-belt pulley is off, we can put on our billet fan, our pulley, lock washer, and let's see what side the nut was facing down before. That one. And again with this, you just want to all right, and the proper way to do that is now you would get a Allen head wrench, stick it in the shaft, and then use a torque wrench or a dog leg, something like that, to get on the nut and torque this to the correct spec. That will be fine for right now for what we're doing. All right, so next up I got to put the power steering pump pulley on, and then we can mount the belt. I'm going to install the power steering pump pulley next. little guys threaded in. All right, next up, mount the belt. All right, now we get to route the belt, which I've already done off screen because routing belt is never fun. So you go under your crank pulley, over this idler pulley here, under your power steering pump, over your alternator, under this upper idler, over your water pump, under this left side idler, over the power steering, and then over your tensioner. Yay. So I'm going to put a 1/2 inch breaker bar in the tensioner, ease that down. Go ahead and pull it off the tensioner because I think it'll be easier.
It was at this point that we screwed up and stopped reading the instructions. Please, always read the instructions.
Keep going. So close.
So close. Click, click. Come on, click over.
Crank.
There we go. That one's in.
It's the clicks of fear that make you go.
That wasn't as easy as we had hoped it would be.
But that is kind of a price you pay with V-belts.
Yeah, I mean,
serpentines.
you've got to have these things tight too, because
that is,
in
in my experience, that is the correct fitment.
Yep.
If you don't cuss and hurt your fingers.
Yeah. I've seen a couple other sketchy methods for doing it too that work.
Yeah.
But they're super sketchy.
My favorite is to put a zip tie right here.
Yeah, I've seen that done too, and do it with the zip ties. And
if the engine starts it.
Yeah, it's all on. I guess now I can
Beauty caps.
Get the caps on there.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to go over a few things with this. One of the things I love about this system, Cam and I tried to find things that we were thinking, oh, this may not be all that cool. We were looking for timing, setting the timing on the car. It's a lot easier with this system on it because you don't have the alternator down low like you do on the Ford stuff, and you got good access on the side to be able to see where your timing pointer is if it's over here. Even if it's on this side, you could probably still get to it, but most of the time Ford's timing pointers are over here unless you're on an early like 1965 engine. One-wire alternator, that's one thing that you will have to do. If you don't have a one-wire system on your car, you're going to have to convert it over to run this. Fairly easy process. We've done a couple of videos showing how to run one-wire alternators. The one thing that is different and completely different is the alternator is over here and the AC compressor is over here. So you're going to have to run your wires in a way to get over to this. I would probably recommend a good-sized wire going from the alternator to the battery because you're going a little bit further distance than you would if they had the alternator mounted on this side. With the AC compressor over here, it's closer to your hookups for most air conditioning systems that are on the passenger side of the car, but there are some hookups like your filter dryer and things like that that typically on a Ford are over on the driver's side. So you're going to kind of play a mix of match, and you're going to have probably custom hoses done to run this. All right, now on the power steering pump, you're probably going to have custom hoses made on this for your pressure and low, only because most of the time these are not going to be in the right spot if you're using this, like say stock Saginaw. If you're doing a custom setup, just go and get your hydraulics shop locally to make you a set of hoses for it and you should be good to go. One last thing on the detail type items on this, this is a nice 9-groove belt, and though we struggled a little bit to get it on because we didn't actually follow the instructions, you know, we had to do the guy thing for once. We did it our own way. You're supposed to take loose the alternator pulley assembly and then put the belt on and then tighten the pulley back up in order to make that work. We didn't do that. We went at it a little different way. It still worked out. Man, I don't know. I can't find anything I don't like about this. So, dude,
It's nice. There is one thing I don't like about it though.
what's that?
We're gonna have to take it off.
Yeah, we're going to put this in Kylie's 67 Mustang to cure the problems we were talking about at the front of the show. And it would look really, really nice in your 65 Mustang or my 64 Falcon hardtop with this 347.
Yeah.
But we have a normal serpentine belt system from a 90 Mustang that we're going to be throwing off into the Falcon, and you're on your own.
Yeah. My POS doesn't deserve something that looks this good anyway.
That's one of the things we were talking about off camera, is that I noticed that the more that we put of this on the front of the engine, the less pretty the rest of this started looking. Like, I cleaned it up, and it still doesn't look nice enough to be having this out front.
Yeah, the Falcon's probably the cleanest engine bay that we have, probably besides the wagon,
Yeah,
I'd say.
I'd say you're right.
Even, yeah, it'd still do it shame. And
Yeah, I think it would.
We're
We're going to have to do some stuff
there.
if we're going to use this. And Kylie's engine bay, now we got a few things that we're going to want to do in it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to match this.
Looking like a gem in a junkyard.
Speaking of a gym and a junkyard, folks, why don't you check out our Patreon account at the $10 a month level. You get monthly meetings with me on Zoom. It's really a lot of fun. We probably have about 7, 8, 9 people show up. I would like to see more of you guys that are at the $10 a month level coming in on the Sunday evenings that we do this. But if you don't, that's fine too. And the thing I'll say about that is this: if we've ever done anything to help you out with your cars, it would be cool for you to go in and just do a little bit of support. That's all. And the money doesn't go to me. The money goes to the kids that come in here on Saturday, as well as to pay Andrew's, I don't know, what are we going to call it this time?
Ford.
Yeah, room and board. So, Mom, Dad, if you're watching, go ahead and start charging him room and board. He's making money. He says no. Go ahead and gig him for it. The names that have been running up and down beside me, I don't know, here, maybe over here. Those are the guys that have put their money where their mouth is, and they are supporting us on a monthly level. The guys like Pat that are up there at the top of the list, those are our top supporters. These guys are putting in way more than the $10 a month, and we do appreciate those guys for that. Also, subscribe to the channel. We are on our march to 100,000 subscribers. We're at 96,000 subscribers-ish right now, so we're getting danger close, but I'm thinking we probably won't make it by Christmas unless people out there go and talk to other people to come in and give us some supporters. Just subscribe to the channel and be a part of it. After we get to 100,000, I will absolutely shut up about this. There'll be a little subscribe button in the corner that pops up while I'm doing the other part, so you won't have to listen to all this crap from here on out. Well, that point on out. So that'll be the way it goes. I guess that's it. So be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week. I'll see you next time on Autorestomod. This really needs to be cleaned up if this is going to stay, but this isn't going to stay, so we're going to be putting a different system on this to make this so this won't look so bad.
Yeah, so you don't need to clean it up.
I do have to clean that one up.
Yeah, but you don't need to clean this up.
We got to do the top pieces now too, because it's going to look like crap with this on there.
Yeah.
You put this beautiful thing in the engine bay with the rusty cap pieces.
Making more work.
I am making more. I didn't think I was making more work, but somehow I made more work. Let's go get a beer.
Yes. Can we do like one of those goat screams instead of clapping?